pots is a storage solution that I use a lot on my desk. I have lots of different pen pots all over my studio with different pens. They're a great way of not only organising different types of supplies, so I put all my fine liners in one, I have paint pens in another, I often put art supplies that I'm using for a particular project in a separate pen container, but they're also a great way of recycling and reusing old packaging and things. So the first two pen pots that I have here are actually made out of old Pringle packets, and if you don't know what Pringles are, they're a type of they're a snack basically. They're a potato crisp, and I don't eat them, but a friend of mine had these little mini Pringle pots and they're perfect for pen containers. So once he'd finished eating the crisps, I took the pen containers, cleaned them out, and then just stuck some sticker paper with some of my pattern designs on them around the outside. And so I often like to keep an eye out for packaging that I can use to store things in. Glass jars are another product that I use a lot in my studio to store things in. I've got two different glass jars here, and I get my glass jars from the kitchen whenever we've bought food that's in a glass jar. I wash out the glass jar and I bring it into my studio to store pens in, to store things in, and I've stuck sticker paper around the outside of the glass jars. And I store a lot of my pen containers upright, but you could stack them horizontal, glue different containers together. Trying to find recyclable materials, so glass jars, packaging that you can use to store your products in is a great way to reuse things. And the glass jars are really sturdy, and you could paint them with acrylic paints if you wanted, or glass paints. They're a really useful storage solution. So another item that I use a lot for for storing pens and paintbrushes are tea and coffee mugs. Tea and coffee mugs that are not usable in the kitchen any longer. So this one here, this mug originally came from the Disney store and it got broken, and I fixed it, but I glued the pieces back together, but it wouldn't be able to hold any liquid in it. So I glued it back together and I'm now using it to store my paintbrushes. So it really gives this coffee mug a new life because it can't hold tea or coffee anymore, but I can use it to store my paintbrushes. And if you've got a mug that's chipped, you want to use a little bit of polymer clay like I did on this mug. I put some polymer clay in the cracks so that there wouldn't be any rough edges, so I wouldn't hurt myself, but it does give tea and coffee mugs and things that get broken a new life if you can use them to store things in them. And I have lots of different containers that I use to sort different pencils in. I've got a couple of glass containers here, and they're just really useful. You can sort your different supplies by brand or by type, and I find that by having things out of the original packets, now a lot of these things didn't come in packets, I've bought them open stock, so having containers that you can store different types of pencils and things in is really useful on your desk. But I also find having things out very important. If they're out on my desk, if I can see them and reach for them easily, I tend to use them more. So that's another reason why I have a lot of the supplies out on my desk as opposed to in a drawer somewhere. And I also like having these little white containers for putting supplies in for a particular project. So if I'm working on an illustration over several days and I have to put it away or tidy up for a bit, I like to have some empty containers that I can put different colour palettes together in so that I don't lose my colours. And those are some of the pen pots that I use in my studio. I try to recycle and reuse as much as possible, and I'm always on the lookout for packaging that I can reuse, glass jars and things like that, and I find pen pots to be a really useful storage solution. Right, so for the markers that I need to store horizontally, I've created a couple of different storage solutions for these. Again, these are made out of recycled materials, out of old pieces of packaging, and I've made all the pen storage at the back of my desk myself. So the one that I'm showing you here is a sort of a standalone desk tidy type of structure. It's basically made out of old little packets that originally contained the Copic markers. When I purchased my markers, they came in these little cardboard packets, 3 in a pack, and I glued all the little packets together and then surrounded the packets with some thick cardboard. And you can always make these little sort of rectangle boxes by cutting 5 pieces of cardboard and gluing them together, so you have a base, 2 sides and a front and a back. And they make excellent storage containers for holding pens, because you can sit them up horizontally, you can sit them on their side, or you can sit them upright. They're very versatile and they can change depending on how you change your desk. And that's another thing that I try to think about when I make storage for my desk, is that I try to make it all as compact as possible, but I also try to think, well, if I ever wanted to change things around, which it's sometimes nice to do, I like to be able to have my storage movable so that I can move things around, I can turn things up in a different way, and it makes it very versatile as well. And this is another storage solution that I made for my various ink bottles, and these are the ink refill bottles for the Copic markers. And again, I used the packaging that the refills came in, and I glued all the little boxes together, and I surrounded it with cardboard and made this little desk tidy type thing. And again, it's a standalone unit. You can put it up on its side, on its bottom, you can really stand it up any way that you want. And I've surrounded the whole thing with very thick cardboard, so it's very sturdy, and I've covered all of these different desk tidies with patterned paper just to make them look pretty, because I do like my desk to be really nice and colourful. And I've designed everything on my desk to fit together so that I can get as many different supplies as possible into quite a small space. And if you have any type of supply that comes in paper packaging that you could possibly reuse to turn into a permanent storage solution, it's always worth having a look at the packaging your supplies come in and having a look to see if you could possibly reinforce it with some thicker cardboard or glue them together somehow to make a permanent storage solution. So now moving on to the Copic case, and this is a really good storage solution if you have markers that need to sit horizontal like most alcohol-based markers do. And I've had quite a few questions about the Copic case, so I thought this would be an excellent opportunity to get it out to show you how it's constructed. Basically, it's very simple. The case took me about 10 minutes to make, and all it is little cardboard boxes that have been stacked and glued together. And these little cardboard boxes were originally from IKEA, and they came in sets of 3, so they're stacking boxes. There's a big one, a medium one and a small one, and I bought 4 sets of them and I just glued them together, and that's all I did to make this case. And as you can see, I can lift it up, I can carry it around, I can lay it on its side like this, so it's a very versatile piece of storage. The cardboard is really thick and sturdy, and it took me only 10 minutes to make it because all the boxes were pre-bought. And I do have some little bits of cork on the bottom so that it can sit up off the desk a little bit. It makes it easier to take the markers in and out. But if you wanted to make something similar, you just need to find some cardboard boxes. Try to get as sturdy a cardboard as possible, or if not card, you could use wood or you could use plastic. Just make sure that it's something nice and sturdy, and then you can just glue your containers together to create the box. And it's a very useful storage solution for the markers. And of course, if you can't find little cardboard boxes in the shops, you can obviously make your own as well. But now I'm going to show you guys how I store my washi tape. Now you can store washi tape in a little box like this, and that's great if you've only got a few different tapes and they're easy, the box is easy to rummage through to see what you have. But as my collection's grown, I found a much better solution, and I saw this on Pinterest, and it is really so useful. It's really simple. It's just an embroidery hoop, and the great thing about an embroidery hoop is that it has that little nut and bolt on the end of it, so you can undo it and slip the washi tape on. And that means I can see very simply what tape I have. I can take tape off the roll without taking the tape off the hoop, and I can also hang the tape up in my studio so I can have it visually out, and it also looks really pretty on the hoop as well. And if you had lots of different washi tapes, you could always have a couple of these hoops and colour coordinate them. So in order to put them on the hoop, it's very simple. You just need an embroidery hoop. You don't have to get a very expensive high quality hoop for this, because you're not going to be using it again and again to embroider, but you just want to take the middle section out, and then you take the nut and the bolt off the top of it, and you can just slip your washi tapes onto the embroidery hoop. And it really is a very simple and useful way of storing the washi tape. And I just came across this randomly one day on Pinterest, and I just thought it was such a good idea that I wanted to use it myself in my studio and to show you guys. So that's how I store my washi tape. So next we have some little trays, and having little trays in your studio, in your art desk, is a great storage solution for bottles and little tiny supplies that you want to keep out but you want to sort of contain. And one of the ways that I keep keep my art desk and studio tidy is that I have lots of trays to store things. Otherwise, bottles can fall off the table, they can roll away, they can go missing, and everything can get very cluttered very quickly. So if you have a couple of these little trays to store little bottles, glue sticks, glitter, just random things that you use but you'd like to keep together. And these little trays were from chocolate packets. Sometimes when you buy a box of chocolates or candy, they come in quite sturdy plastic or cardboard trays, and so I've got a couple of these that I use to store my little bottles. So now I want to show you these little tubs, and these are from IKEA. This video is not sponsored by IKEA, but I do like IKEA stuff, and they're very sturdy. They're made out of plastic. I use them for storing scissors and the marker airbrush and larger objects, and they have this little useful hook on the back of them, so you can clip them onto anything that the edge of a desk or something where you have a little ridge that you can hook these buckets onto, and they also fit perfectly onto the little utility carts that you may have seen a lot of artists have online. You may have seen pictures, and they have them in IKEA, and these little tubs fit perfectly onto that, so they allow you to have more storage. Another storage solution that I use are these pre-bought storage containers. Now, some companies like Ranger make storage solutions to go along with their products. They do tend to be a little bit more expensive than regular storage containers, but they are an option if you'd like some storage for particular products. And some of the storage solutions that I particularly like for the little bits and pieces, particularly for little bits like embellishments and buttons, and these are things that I use on my mixed media cards and more crafting projects. But I have a lot of different buttons here and little bits and pieces and sequins, and these little containers are perfect for storing things like that. So if you have items like this, it's always a good idea to keep an eye out for little containers like this. And then the larger one here, I actually picked this up not long ago in Tiger, and I know probably quite a few of you have a Flying Tiger store near you, and this was very inexpensive, and it's perfect for storing little bits and pieces. So a lot of this stuff in here I use in, as I said, in card making and crafting, but the little sections are perfect for all sorts of things. So at the moment I'm storing wooden embellishments in mine, but you could store beads, you could store buttons, you could store little tiny art supplies. If you have anything that's small that you'd like to be able to see, and I like this because I can organise my embellishments into different themes, and I can easily see what I have without having to rummage through a whole box, and it's small, it's light, and it's portable. I can carry it around because it has a little handle on it. So I like to keep an eye out for little storage containers like this. They're always really useful, and you can store, if you have any supply that's very small, then these are really useful for storing things like that in. Another useful storage solution is a chest of drawers, and I have this little mini wooden chest of drawers out on my desk, and this is another useful storage solution for tiny little things. So I have inks, and I store a lot of refills, paint tubes, miscellaneous supplies that I don't have anywhere else for. I put into the chest of drawers, and it's really useful for keeping those things together so you don't use them. And the way that my art desk is organised is I like the chest of drawers because it makes a good stacking unit. If you're trying to make the most of a small amount of space, and if you are storing quite a few of your supplies on your desk like I am, it's useful to have these sort of chests of drawers as a base layer, because you can not only store lots of stuff in them, but you can stack stuff on top of them. So if you're trying to make the most out of a small amount of space, then having stacking units is a really useful way of doing that. I do also store things in their original containers, and this is useful for things like paints, watercolor paints that come in sets. They're much safer. It's much safer for the paints, and it's much more convenient to store things in their original containers a lot of the time. Particularly if the art supply comes in a nice tin, then you don't really need to take things out or look for another storage